do we have gardeners here today? Yes, some people are not raising their hand. Y'all know this is a gardening talk, right? All right, cool. All right, how do you know you're a gardener? If you can remember the scientific name of the 26 different viburnum that are in your garden, but you cannot remember your anniversary, you might be a gardener. How many people suffer from what I call CHAD, compulsive horticultural acquisition disorder? Yeah, this is our safe space for that. How many people their car? You go out to do whatever it is you're going to do, and suddenly you're at the garden center. You're like, I don't know how I got here. And I'm going to echo what people say, and that is, how many people have purchased a plant and their significant other has gone, where are you going to put that? The solution to that, also in the ground, is a great answer. I'm going to steal that. But my solution to that was to find a quarantine area where I could sneakily hide my purchases from my significant other until I got to say, oh, honey, we've had that. Don't know where you've been. So today we're going to talk a little bit about color, because everybody's always interested in having color in their gardens. And I don't really care how you do it. This is very colorful, highly amusing, and I bet the deer are very confused by this. I don't know which side to jump over. Always do something fun. We've got gardeners, right? If you are the crazy gardener in your neighborhood, your neighbors are already talking about you. So you might as well have 100 pink flamingos in your garden, this was my house up in Worcester before we moved down to the Columbus area. I had 101 pink flamingos, and they have a story. And I didn't get along super well with some of the people in my neighborhood, and so I got to thinking about, what is it that I can force you to look at while you look at my house? What is the tackiest garden thing I can think of? The pink flamingo. So I bought a box, and I did not have the metal legs shoved up the butt of the first one when they were running across the street. I mean, literally running across the street. What are you doing? Well, I'm putting this in the garden. What do you want it to do? Well, I hope it multiplies. Turns out plastic pink flamingos multiplied like bunnies, and we very quickly went from 2 to 101. So we want 4-season. I want to go with interest, because it's very difficult in Ohio, even here where I can see you're a couple of weeks ahead of where we are in central Ohio. You want 4-season interest, and we're going to consider a lot of different parts of the plant to get that. Even though this is a talk technically on color, we want to talk a little bit about color theory. We want to talk a lot about art, because whose garden is it? It's your garden. It doesn't matter if you like your garden and you don't. If you don't like their garden, it doesn't matter. You can talk about them behind their back afterwards. It's your garden, so you have to have fun with it, and art is very, very personal. And then, as we are dealing with so much rain the last couple of days, Mother Nature has to like you that particular season, and gardeners are very hopeful, because tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, next decade, whatever it is, will always be better than the weather that we're dealing with right now. So let's start a little bit about the science of color theory. The best $5 or $8 purchase you're going to make is going to get yourself a color wheel. Well, I can't spend $8 on something that's not a plant. Okay, go to the box store and get paint chips. Steal the crayons from your kids or your grandchildren or the neighbor's children, and just start scribbling on a piece of paper. Paint chips are the best. They're free, and every year they come up with new ones, and you get new colors, and you can move them around and fold them and bend them and do all sorts of color things. And when you find a color combination that you like, you take it to the garden center and you go, this is what I want. And you walk around the garden center and you find plants that are that color or have those shades, and you put those ones in your garden. If you are addicted to spreadsheets, this is a great place for a spreadsheet. Well, I don't know what I'm missing. Okay, so write down the months and the plants that you've got, and then color in or X out, whatever you want, the months that that plant has some interest. The interest could be fall color. The interest could be exfoliating bark. The interest could be its flowers. The interest could be fruit. Whatever is fascinating to you about that particular plant. You will very quickly see that June and July are full. August might be a little bit less. And you will have few things in February, few things in November. And then what you can do is you go to the garden center and say, find me something that looks good in November. Find me something that has seasonal interest in December. You're probably not going to get bright yellow daisies in December, though I suppose you could go buy plastic plants. But you're probably not going to get that. You can get exfoliating bark. You can get seed heads that remain up and provide you with some interest, in addition to food for the birds. Draw on paper. What is it that you like? What color combinations do you want? What are your favorite colors? What's your least favorite color? Find those paint chip combinations that make you go, oh, that looks like my dog vomited in the yard. No, I don't want that. So find those things that you like. Find those things that you don't like. Because it's going to be important when you go to the garden center. We've all established that we want all of the plants at the garden center, right? Every single one of them. And then you have to figure out how to put them together so that you don't walk past it and go, no, I can't look at that anymore. Do you have containers? Take them shopping with you. Do you have other yard art that you would like to match? Take it shopping with you. Well, Laura, it lays 9,200 billion thousand pounds. Take a picture. All of us have a smartphone nowadays. Take a picture and go to the garden center and wander around with your smartphone. Oh, that looks great. I'm buying that. That would look fantastic either in my container or near the container or around my art, whatever it is that you're working on. And then keep it simple, silly. You don't need, yes, we do need every single plant and we do need every single color, but you don't. You just need a few colors. Otherwise, your landscape will look like 1970s horror movie wallpaper. And while that's kind of cool in a horror movie, that's not what we want in our gardens. You can even go on that super simple program, Paint, and draw a bunch of circles, put different colors in them, and your computer can see more colors than you can. 256 bazillion colors is what they see. I can't see that many colors. No. But find the major colors that you like. Again, take that to the garden center until you find combinations that work for you. And then you have to have luck. Mother Nature plays tricks on us all the time. The critters show up. I planted this thing. Yay! I've done a pollinator garden. Do you know what else pollinators attract? If you plant a garden for the pollinators, you've planted a garden for the squirrels and the deer and the bunnies. They all like those same things. So you might get critters. You might get critters. You can see exactly how tall the deer are in this particular neighborhood because that's pruning by deer. Mother Nature's doing this right now. No self-respecting gardener would knowingly plant tulips where they're going to have to go swimming the following year. They don't like to go swimming. They like their feet to be dry. Mother Nature says, I don't care. You're going to get tons and tons of rain at this time and your tulips are going to drown. The plants don't read. Black-eyed Susans are great, aren't they? They're wonderful. You just put them in the ground and they do their thing, although you've probably heard the phrase, they sleep, they creep, and then they leap. Black-eyed Susan, after about 3 or 4 years, is on a mission to eat every space it possibly can. And you can see it happily here beating up both a purple coneflower and a Shasta daisy. It's a beautiful color. They're absolutely fantastic. I don't think you can make enough bouquets out of Black-eyed Susan to keep them under control at some point. So you have to pay attention to some of those sorts of things. And now we're going to look to all parts of the plant, not just the flowers. I'm fairly convinced that even my husband, who is not a plant geek at all, he is learning. We've been married for nearly 34 years, so he's learning to like the plants. But I'm convinced that even he could go to a garden center in the middle of June, buy a dozen or a dozen and a half plants, and plop them in the ground almost randomly, and it would probably look halfway decent, because lots of things flower in June. But we want to have flowering at multiple seasons. So I took this up in Quebec City, and I didn't really quite realize how up there Quebec City is until I actually looked on a map. And this garden is about 15 feet deep and 300 feet long. And so it's repetition of these same colors and same color combinations all the way down. And every season has different versions of whatever color combination that they're having. I was really, really jealous of their ability to grow delphiniums that are like 12 feet tall, because I put delphiniums in the ground and they are immediately like, Your soil is terrible and I'm going to heaven. Thank you very much. Your color combinations don't have to be complicated. Find a color. Go to the garden center and pick plants in that color. This is kind of an orangey red color combination. Your hardscapes can be part of your landscape. Your house is an integral part of your landscape. It's a major feature of your yard. Maybe it has cool peaks or interesting windows. Maybe you've got a colorful door or you've got shutters that have a different color. Bring that into the garden. So here we take a look. What colors do we see? It is mostly blue and green, spattering of gray with the rocks. And it is absolutely fascinating still, even though the color combinations are not fantastic right there. Fall color. Anybody recognize this tree? Nyssa savatica. This is our black gum or black tupelos, one of our native trees, and this is its fall color. Recognizing that Ohio State is fantastic at producing red colors, and it's saying, yes, Ohio State, go Bucks. Fothergilla can have really nice fall color. So we want to make sure we find those plants that have good fall color. Fruiting. We have really nice fruiting capabilities. This is beautyberry, and it does this in the fall. It also has a very nice little delicate pink flower that if you put your nose into it in the spring, it has a really nice fragrance to it. But they're so small that you're really not going to notice them. We notice when it does this at the end of the season with the fruits. Purple. You like purple? Okay, go to the garden center and buy a bunch of plants that are in purple. But what really makes this, in my opinion, is not just the purple, but it's those onion seed heads that are stark contrast in shape. So if you look at a lot of the shapes of the flowers there, we've got the butterfly bush with its kind of conical shape. We've got the liatris with its kind of conical shape. That's the pink flower in the front. And then you put a pom-pom in there. And they look fantastic. And they were purple before everything else came into this color. Bark. Here's the exfoliating or peeling bark of paper bark maple. And it looks fantastic against winter snow. And I'm happy we got some snow this year. And when it was cold and we had snow on the ground, because snow is a wonderful insulator, it's fantastic for our plants. You're going to read books. And you're going to go to the garden center. And you're going to read tags. And the tag will say, this goes in the sun. This one goes in the shade. And here are lilies that the tag will say go in the sun. There with the stilbees that the tag will say goes in the shade. Put them together. Why not? They might grow. In fact, I actually kind of like the leaning of this. I think it adds some interest to this particular garden, even though we know they're leaning because they're trying to get more sunlight. But I think it adds some interest. And when both of these plants go, you know what, we are done with this terrible condition, you can either dig them up and move them to a better location, or if they die, you get to go buy more plants. Plant death is the opportunity to shop, and I say take advantage of it. All right, color theory. Go get yourself a color wheel, and if you don't want to spend money on a color wheel, do what I did with this one and download it off the internet. And I'm not expecting you to read all the little text, but it will define a whole bunch of terms like complementary and analogous and triad and monochromatic and all of those sorts of things. But learn Roy G. Biv. Become a fan of the Roy G. Biv fan club. What does that mean? Who's Roy G. Biv? Red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, violet. A few years ago, scientists discovered that human beings have a very difficult time differentiating where indigo stops and starts. And so they said, well, we're going to actually take that out, which leaves us with Roy G. Bzz, and I'm not sure that's quite as friendly. How do you describe color? What color is this? Tangerine. Coral? Pinkish. If your box of crayons is 8, you're like, that's not in my box. I don't know what that is. Orangey-ish, maybe. Okay, that was too hard. What color is this? Purple. All right. Color is actually very, very subjective. Most of us in here would say that's purple. Can I guarantee that every single person in this room sees the exact same purple as the person sitting next to them? No. And in fact, if you look on the 3 different screens here, and I've got a screen in the back that I can look at, you might actually see 4 different shades of purple in your eye, depending upon how you personally see color. What color is this? lavender, purple, blue. Okay, the company that sells this one happens to be Salvia Blue Hill, and so they say it's blue. Why would they say blue when a 4-year-old might say, no, that's kind of a purple? Blue sells better. That's a marketing gimmick. Purple Hill doesn't sound as great because we got lots of purple flowers. If you can squint and see a hint of blue, oh yeah, maybe I see that. Okay, then we're gonna call that blue because there's not as many blue flowers in the industry. So we call it blue so it will sell a little bit better. So that got me thinking about colors, very hard to describe. So I actually went and I looked up the dictionary definitions for a few colors. So lavender, pale to light purple or pale violet. Pale purple, pale violet. Mauve, moderate grayish violet to a moderate grayish purple. Okay. Lilac, pale to light or moderate purple. Purple, a group of colors with a hue between violet and red. That's the only one that has a sort of a definition to it. And then I got, well, maybe the problem is I picked a color that you get by mixing other colors. It's not a pure color. So there's the dictionary definition of red. All right. The hue of the long wave end of the visible spectrum evoked in the human observer by radiant energy with wavelengths of approximately 630 to 750 nanometers. That clearly makes it total obvious what red is. Clear as mud now. Look at the bottom definition. Anybody remember doing like vocabulary words and you had to define certain words? Were you ever allowed to define the word with the word? No, right out of the dictionary, something that is red. Red is something that is red. How did you learn what red is? From the time you were teeny tiny little, adults in your life would point things out and say, that is black, and that is blue, and that is brown, and that is gray, and that is red. And so you just trusted that what they were saying and what you were seeing were true. Do you want to mess with the next generation of children? Tell them that red is green or red is white. Then they're going to get to kindergarten and their teacher is like, what? And they'll never trust anybody ever again. All right, despite what Ohio State actually says is scarlet, if you look up dictionary definition of scarlet, scarlet should be red with a hint of yellow to it versus crimson, which is red with a hint of blue. Now, if your box of crayons is 8, is there a difference? We are going to call both of these red, aren't we? If your box of crayons is 64, and they actually have 150 now, my generation was, the big thing was you go and get the box of 64 that had the sharpener in the back. It was the best thing ever. It's like today's $2 equivalent of an iPhone, right? There were tons and tons of different colors in there that you could use to mix and match, and things were actually different shades. So we're going to sort those out a little bit. We're going to take Roy G. Biv and we're going to sort those out a little bit into cool or hot or warm. You hear those terms used interchangeably. And the cool colors are the things that are calming and relaxing. They just make us settle. And the hot or the warm colors are very exciting. They're very emotional. We get really riled up by those sorts of things. And we know this is true because if you have to visit a relative in prison, you're not allowed to wear an Ohio State red shirt. Red's very, very exciting. We don't want that in prison. You can actually go and do a simple psychological study with people. It doesn't have to even involve visiting a prison. They take people who volunteer for these studies, and they'll take half of them and they lock them in a room for an hour, and split them up into 2 groups, lock them into a room for an hour, no phones, anything like that. And one's a blue room and one's a red room. Then they take them out after an hour, and they show them little pictures. And it might be, the same picture, might be something as simple as a kitten and a ball of yarn. And if you're in the blue room, you say the kitten's playing with the yarn. And if you're in the red room, you come out saying the kitten's attacking the yarn. See how the language becomes more aggressive? So we know these hot and warm colors can be very, very exciting to us. And you can use this to your advantage. If your life is, maybe you need that in your garden so that you can come home and get all excited about being in the garden again. And if you're one of those people that comes home from work and you're just like, don't talk to me until I've had a glass of wine. We probably don't need any more excitement in your garden. So you're already ramped up from that. So what do we have here? Tulips. What's our color? And what type of color are we? Are we a hot color or a cool color? Hot colors. You can use that. Hot colors generally combine very well. What color is this? That's like the most terrifying question nowadays, isn't it? Pink. Maybe some reds in the back? How about this? Purple. Now, here's the thing about color. You can take a cool color and get a plant that has more color saturation in it, and it becomes a little bit more exciting. Now, the color people would say, oh, we're just going to add more pigment. Well, you're not going around spray painting your flowers. At least I hope you're not. So you go and you find a different cultivar or a different species that serves your needs still, that's got more color saturation to those particular flowers. What color is this? Stop asking us that. Mauve, red. The company that breeds this, the common name for this grass is red annual fountain grass. So it's at least a shade of red. If your box of crayons is 8, this is going to fall into that red category. Maroon, Merlot, burgundy, any of those might work. Mauve, okay, I'm all right with some of that. And you'll notice, what is the gardener doing here? Matching the plant to the mailbox that's right there. Nice color combination. Now, what about pink? How do you make pink? You take red and then you add white, right? And so pink starts as a hot color or a warm color. But depending upon the amount of white that you add, you can actually take pink into the cool color range, at least visually for us. So pink gets to play on both sides of the fence. You can do pink in all kinds of different ways, from this hot nuclear bomb pink to a very soft, delicate baby pink. And then we've got our neutral colors. Our neutral colors are going to be your silvers, your blacks, or your very deep purples, your white, your gray. And these are great plants to put in between other things that might otherwise class. So you go to the garden center and you pick up a plant, you're like, oh, this is great. And it has a picture of the tag on it, it's got the picture with the flower on it, you're like, oh, this is absolutely beautiful. You walk a little ways, you pick up another plant, oh, this is absolutely fantastic. And when you put those two tags next to each other, you're like, no, cannot do that. And so you buy a neutral color to put in between them, and then those colors bounce off of something that are not themselves, they're playing with that neutral color instead. So this is a geranium. This is just a plain old annual geranium. You can find these growing at any McDonald's. Usually they're the red ones. And that's a nice pink. I like the pink. That pink is really set off by the fact that that leaf is black. Otherwise, that pink is not worthy of taking a picture. It's just a plain old pink. They're technically water lilies, so this is officially a garden. But silver is a very neutral color, and you could put any color. If this was not a pond, but this was something that you had in your backyard and you like this color, then you could have any color combination because silver plays well with lots of different things. Here's black and white. That can be a great color combination. Yes, officially I know it's purple, but we're going to go with, if we can call purple blue, we can also call purple black. It's like the cauliflower of the plant world. All right, if you get a color wheel, you'll find these definitions on there. Monochromatic is all one color. Now, can we really do all one color in the world of plants? Because most plants have what color in their leaves? Green. So whatever their flower color is, we're probably also got green that we're dealing with. But you can get a lot of different shades. How many different plants can you think of that has various shades of yellow flowers? Everything from a pastel yellow all the way to looks like a nuclear bomb went off yellow in your garden. So there's tons and tons of different shades. If you look at a color wheel, you'll see it's Roy G. Biv arranged in a circle, right? Analogous colors are right next to each other. They will almost always work in color combinations. Complementary colors are on opposite sides of the color wheel. So you're going to do things like your red and your green, your blue and orange, purple and yellow. And those are also will almost always work. So you think, oh, I like purple and yellow as a color combination. So now you get to go to the garden center every 2 weeks. Did you catch what I gave you permission to do? Shop a lot. Tell your significant other not to worry, it's fine. And you find things in that color combination for every single season. That keeps it fairly simple. You can also do a triad, which is the triangle across so that you would not quite be analogous and not quite be complementary. And that's skipping a color, basically. So if you do Roy G. Biv, red, skip the orange, and go to yellow. Right? So that's another way to do pretty decent color combinations. And if you can't remember these sorts of things, then all you simply have to do is take a picture of a color wheel or go to the garden center and go, well, I like that. What's it look good with? That. All right, I'll buy those. And then you go to the people at the garden center, you say, these are my 2 favorite colors. Find me other things that have these colors in different seasons. And they will happily take your money to buy 32,000 plants. Can't think of what you want to do color-wise? Pick one color. So this is a monochromatic garden where everything here has either white flowers or white variegated foliage or both. Also notice the backdrop. It's kind of that silvery gray, falls into that still same color range of white as monochromatic. This particular garden was a private garden, and this is where the homeowner went out to relax, but I was so amped up after walking around it because I was like, oh my God, this is like emotional. This is fantastic. This is wonderful. This was not a place where I could be calm, but here's monochromatic in yellow. You can do it in containers. Doesn't have to be a huge, massive garden for those of you who might not have massive spaces in your yard. Small patches of color. Here's the thing, our eyes are great for seeing vistas, but to really look at something, you have to look. You have to focus your eyes on that. So if you break up a larger space into a series of smaller vignettes, maybe with your neutral colors in between, that is a way to handle a much larger space and break it up into spaces that we can then concentrate on rather than trying to think, what am I going to do across this whole area? I have absolutely no idea. So come up with some smaller vignettes, and they can be different colors or they can be same colors. All right, what's the function of the silver plant? Now, what did we say silver was? It's a neutral color. It's also there to let you see that that's kind of the edge of the garden because it's very difficult to tell the green of the boxwood from the green of the turf. So one of its functions is also to say, don't stop walking. What about the color combinations here? Do we like it? Raise your hand if you like it. Raise your hand if you're like, I don't know. Well, for those of you who don't like it, we'll make sure that we tell the folks at the Palace of Versailles that we were unhappy with their gardens. Doesn't have to be huge space, right? This garden is only going to look good at one point during the year, and that's when all of these are flowering, and then it's going to be a place that you just walk through because the plants aren't going to be flowering. Go with your complementary colors. That can be done in your woody plants as well. But I'm not necessarily recommending barberry. In fact, avoid barberry. Definitely avoid barberry if you're trying to do something that has to be trimmed every 18 seconds. Unless you really, really like cat scratches all over your hands, because they will fight back. Purple and yellow. It's not blue and yellow. It's purple and yellow. That's your complementary color scheme. And they look great when they're flowering together. Find things, there's red and yellow. Find things that flower at the same time in color combinations that you like. If you're like, well, I want more than just 2 plants. All right. So let's do kind of a triad thing sort of here. We've got the yellow and we've got the red. Well, we're going to bring in the blue, purple. That also works with the red. It also works with the yellowish there. And now I'm going to go to it. If you look down in front, you'll see a little bit more yellow. It's a different shade of yellow. And we're going to scoot over in the garden and we're going to say, I need some more blue and red and purple and yellow. And you're going to come home with a different group of species. And if your yard is small, you might be buying 1 of each of these. And if your yard is very large, you might be buying 3, 5, 7, 12 of each of these, depending upon how big your property is. Color echo is very similar to monochromatic. You hear that's usually when we're dealing with 2, 3, 5 plants, very small groupings of plants. Anything can be a part of this. So if you like my pink flamingos, you can surround them with other pink plants. If you happen to have a gazing ball, you can surround that with other plants of that color or an analogous or complementary color to that particular piece of art in your garden. It doesn't have to be the latest and greatest things that the garden center is releasing. I'm sorry to all of the breeders out there. It does have to be the latest and greatest. It doesn't. And I'm not recommending buying your plants from a box store. Let's tell you a story. So when my son is almost 26. When he was about 6 or 7, we went to a Walmart, and I make fun of Walmart because my husband works there, so I feel like I'm allowed to make fun of them. And we went to Walmart, and I don't even remember what we were looking for, but their plants were looking pretty sad, as they often do at Walmart. And he said, "Mom, can we buy all of these plants and rescue them?" So I now look at Walmart as like the Humane Society for plants. I'm going to go there and I'm going to rescue the plants. But it doesn't have to be complicated. This is zebra grass and canna, fairly readily available plants. Find a piece of your house. Now that's a really red fence. And I can bounce reds off of that, and I can use other colors that work well with that. This was the back of a shopping mall in California. That is actually a real light and a real door handle on a painted-on door with painted-on windows with actual geraniums. You can see the water where they've been watering them, sort of, kind of, because they're not happy geraniums. But there's a color echo. Can you imagine running, like being chased by a bad guy or something and running through there and you find a door handle and you're pulling on it and you're pulling on it and you're pulling on it and it's just a painted-on door? I'd be so mad. Raise your color combinations so they do not have to be right next to each other. Here, we've got the tree with the annuals around the base. And so the color goes up into the garden. And that allows you to move your eye, and that's one of our design things that we like, rhythm. Rhythm is movement, just as it is in music. Simple way to get movement, you look down to see the little plants and you look up to see the big plants. That provides some rhythm, and so that gets people interacting with your garden. Invite the aliens if that's what you're trying to do. Give them a place to sit even. But look at the colors. We've got a lot of yellow, and we're popping in that orange from those cushions into the garden. Your yard art could be anything, including a bouncy ball and some cushions. So here, the color echo is coming with the yard art and not necessarily with the few plants that are there. Take a look at this. Now, what flower is this? Daylily. Very common plant that you can get tons and tons of different cultivars of. Last time I checked, I think there were 62,000 registered cultivars of daylily. So there's just a few of them out there, and they're coming out with more every time. But I look at this particular color combination and think, I could plant more yellowy orange. I could plant more reds. I could plant complementary to that. I could plant analogous to that. And I could have different color combinations just with this one little daylily. Again, I'm not necessarily recommending barberry. The advantage to this particular barberry, it lasted 1 year in a pot. And I have to admit, this was up at ATI, the Worcester campus of Ohio State University. And I have to admit, I never really thought about treating woody plants as an annual. But if one is going to treat woody plants as an annual, barberry is the plant to do that with, so it can't escape. And I really liked the color and the habit of this particular one and how it blended nicely with the rest of the containers and the rest of the plants. Play with light. How many people have been to a museum? Those of you who have not been to a museum, you are well aware that there are these buildings that we call museums that we hang paintings on the walls, right? Or sculptures and things. You take a look at the Mona Lisa. You go and you see the Mona Lisa and you're like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. This is so incredible. And then you go back a year later and you're like, oh, this is the Mona Lisa. This is the same that I saw the last time I was here. And you go 5 years later and you go to see the Mona Lisa and you're like, well, this is absolutely amazing. And it's the same that I saw the last time I was here. Because the whole point of a museum is to have the lighting such that those paintings don't change. In fact, they'll yell at you if you take a picture with your flash. They will often put them behind specific glass and plastic so that the light that's in the museum doesn't degrade the colors. That art is not meant to change. That's not the same with a garden. A garden is outside. And the light right now is vastly different than the light in 2 months or the light in 4 months. And the light at 6 o'clock in the morning is very different than the light at 6 o'clock in the evening. And the light on the east side of the house is very different than the light on the west side of the house. So it is the only art form that changes every couple of minutes and every day. And so when you're looking at these slides, you have to recognize it. You're like, oh, that's really, really cool. That's fantastic. I love it. That is a 60th of a second of a snapshot of that garden on that day during that time and that year. You go back 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 days later, that garden's going to look a little bit different. So play with the light if you can. Can you get the light to come behind the plants occasionally? Backlight them? Yeah, spotlighting them is pretty easy. We can just stand out there and go, yep, the sun's shining, it's really hot, put a plant here. Getting the sun to go behind the plants can really have some cool, interesting effects with their colors. Seed heads are fantastic, and again, this is miscanthus, and I'm not necessarily recommending miscanthus. It's becoming increasingly invasive and increasingly problematic. We have fewer problems with it in central Ohio. We had very few problems with it in northeast Ohio when I lived there. But the further south you go, the more likely it is to seed itself around and become a bit of a nuisance. It does have really cool seed heads, though. I will give it that. This is one of our little native plants. And look at the light coming through in the fall. The absolutely incredible fall color on these little native grasses because the light is hitting it exactly right when I was there. There's not a lot of color there. It's like green, some gray, oh, and there's a tuft of brown. Brown is not really the most fascinating color when it comes to flowers, that's for sure. But why does that work? Or at least it works in my mind. Why do you think it works in my mind? Because of the contrast of light. We've got this amazing light at the top of those grasses, and it's much, much darker. And then the light is also shining on those brown seed heads, which is contrasting against the dark shadows of things. So you want to make sure that you're playing with the light where you can. And I know we're gardeners, and we like to go out and do things in the garden. So I know how it goes. Like you get your glass of wine or whatever drink you like. I'm going to go out and I'm going to enjoy my garden. I have spent all summer working on this, and I'm going to go enjoy it. And you put your glass of wine on the table, and you sit down. Oh, is that a weed? And then you have to get up, and you have to go weeding, and the next thing you know, 45 minutes later has gone by, and you're like, crap, I forgot to enjoy. I've been out here weeding. And so you go back to your wine, and there's a dead fly in it. Then you have to think, am I going to drink it anyways? The answer to that is yes. Kick the dead fly out, drink it anyways. The thing with color combinations, right, it's not just one plant. Like we saw that Nyssa at the beginning. We saw the paper bark maple that had the really nice exfoliating bark. That's just one plant looking fantastic. If you want to do color combinations, they have to be flowering at the same time of year. You can't be doing color combinations with your tulips that are just coming up, at least they are for us, just coming up, and asters, which flower in September. So you have to think of what else is going to be flowering at the same time. And this is where annuals come into play, because annuals don't change a whole lot during the growing season. I mean, yes, they might get bigger, and if you're looking at some of our wave petunias and things like that, if you turn around, they might be chasing you and trying to attack your feet and things like that. But most of our annuals are going to look very similar for most of the summer. So they're great plants to bounce other plants off of. And if you get the opportunity to plant in rivers and drifts and not circles and lines, they're not soldiers. They don't need to be lined up in a row. They want to be in drifts and swaths and masses. Then you can bounce your perennials off that annual that isn't going to change a whole lot, and you get lots and lots of different color combinations. That is just petunias and annual phlox. That might cost you $1.95 at a box store. Go and rescue them. You can go with the heirloom plants and things that are very, very strange. That's an heirloom geranium. It's grown for the foliage. It is in flower. Can you see? It has like a flower there. One tiny little flower. A lot of our heirloom plants are grown for foliage. You can have one thing that's absolutely stunning, and when this daylily is done, what's the interest to it? Textural interest between the hosta and the daylily foliage. And if you live in an area where daylily leaf streak disease is a huge problem, go in with your string trimmer, cut them all off, throw them on the compost pile. The daylily will send up a new crop of leaves. No more leaf streak disease. This is the Biltmore. If you have not been to the Biltmore, I recommend you go to the Biltmore. They have more money than God, and they use it a lot. And this is one of their annual displays, and you can see that they are planting in huge masses. And that garden is going to look like that all summer long. But the cool part about that is around that garden, there is a driving pathway, so people with mobility issues can drive through, but you can also walk through. And every part of that square is a different color combination of perennials. Silver and pink. That's the other thing. We say they have to be in flower at the same time. And then I've showed you a bunch of things that have really cool leaves. Look for your foliage colors. Because again, those plants, those silvery leaves, they're going to look like that throughout the rest of the season. Fall color combinations. We want to take advantage of the plants that have really nice fall color. We want to take advantage of those plants that are naturally flowering at the end of the season. And well, yes, that can be mums. Let's look to things like asters and some of our native grasses and some of our native shrubs that have really nice fall color to them. Let's look to containers. I had to look at this picture. I took this picture, I was in Montreal, and they had their Flora Expo there. And I took this picture, I'm like, oh, this is a really cool, interesting kind of color thing with the bronze and the rusty color thing going on. It took me several years of looking at this picture to recognize there are actually little boxwoods in the tops of those planters. You don't even notice them because the arrow points down. It drives your view down to the bottom of that, to where the soil actually is. You like that color combination? Folks are doing a great job of coming up with all kinds of new colors. We got, Pantone is releasing the color of the year every year, and whether you like it or not, whatever color that happens to be, growers will start breeding things in that color so you can get that color in your annuals. You can do all kinds of mixes. What's the dominant color here? Pink. Pick a color. Then pop a few other things around that to set off the pink. Go with bark. Middle of December, we're probably not finding too many things that are flowering. Now, we could argue that depending upon how our seasons go, our witch hazels, our native late season witch hazels might be flowering at that time because we do have one that flowers in November and we have another one that flowers in February, two different species. Most of the hybrids flower February, March. The native one, the larger native one, flowers in November, so you could go with that. But what we're going to look at is bark. And here's a brown and white color combination. This is a witch hazel. I took this shot on Valentine's Day a few years ago when there was 2 feet of snow on the ground. My husband thought I was absolutely insane. I'm like, there's snow on the ground and the witch hazels are flowering. I'm going to go take some pictures. And he's like, what? Well, do you want to come? I'm going to go take a hike in the Arboretum. Absolutely not. It's snowing. It's minus 4,200. I'm not going outside. But I managed to get this shot, and that was worth tromping through the snow. Find the things that flower early. This is winter aconite. Now, this is an ephemeral plant. It's not native, and it is quite vigorous. We'll just go with vigorous. But it's not invasive, and it disappears in 4 weeks. You know what it means if you're planting ephemerals, like your trilliums and most of your bulbs? You need 2 plants in that spot. So those of you who have to have them all, every time you plant bulbs, you have to plant something else. You need 2 plants. That can double the number of plants you get to buy. This is a little iris. This is one of the early flowering netted iris. This one is Iris histrioides, Catherine Hodgkins. This is not, there'll be a test later. You're expected to remember this. This thing comes out in February. So like end of February, beginning of March, depending upon where our snow is. It's only about this tall. So cute little thing. Definitely extends the growing season. Tulips. Now this is at Longwood Gardens, and that is 600 feet of change-out bed. So every few weeks they're changing out. So when the tulips are in, the instant the tulips are done, gone. We put something else in. You can do that in pots very readily. Take it out. We're going to put another pot there. So I'm not sure if I appreciate these yellow foliage things or if I think they just look sick. But yellow foliage, particularly when it first emerges, is definitely another way to get a different color in the garden, because most of the time this is going to be more of a blue-green. Gardens change, and we want them to change, and we need them to change. Because if they didn't change, I'd have to only buy 3 plants, and I don't want to just buy 3. I want to buy 300 plants. So we want different seasonality to our gardens. And here's a very early spring. This was up on the Worcester campus of Ohio State University. It's the same garden a couple weeks later, or maybe a month later. Containers. When I first discovered container gardening, I had to kick the cars out of the garage because I wanted containers in all the driveway, and then I discovered containers need a lot of water. And I was tired of dragging hoses around. So I've scaled back my containers. But containers allow you to do things and grow plants that you might not otherwise be able to grow. What's the function of the silver plant here? Neutral, contrast, because if we take a look at the flower colors, there's mostly pinky purples. Not very interesting, but the silver makes that. For those of you who are wondering, that is woolly sage, Salvia argentea. That is a biennial. It will overwinter here for us. The first year you get these huge, wonderful leaves. The second year the leaves are smaller, which is the case for most biennials. Then it bolts and sends up a flowering stalk. It has these massive, massive, typical salvia-shaped, pure white flowers. You're like, oh, that's amazing. And it smells like 1,000 cats have used your yard like a litter box. Don't let it flower. Our garden centers are even getting into trying to help people come up with color combinations. So as things are flowering in the garden center, they'll move them and put them next to each other to help people know what to buy. And do they like that color combination? Because then you can go and buy those plants and put them in the ground and have a nice color combination of your own. How many different colors could I pop around this guy? Daylilies are great for that. They themselves don't flower for a whole long time, but they're fantastic for popping other different plants near them. Don't forget your foliage combinations. If we take a look at this, we see a lot of basic green, but if you take a look at the center of the leaf of the fern, you'll notice a bit of a reddish color, and that reddish color is almost exactly the same as the coleus in the back. So find color combinations. It is actually okay to pick up a plant in the garden center and walk around until it speaks to you with another plant. There's our standard red, white, and, well, purple, red, white, and blue. Anything you want. Find any color that works for you and buy those plants as long as it makes you happy. Your significant other will probably go, what are you doing? Unless they're gardening with you. And your neighbors are already talking about you. You know how to get around the neighbors talking about you in your garden? Garden in your front yard. Because then when you pull weeds, you have to turn around to pull the weeds. Black and white can be a color combination as well. Go up with things, if possible. And that could be a trellis, it could be a vine, it could be some structure that you build, it could be a shrub that you've popped in that's flowering, that's been pruned into a lollipop. Anything that you can do to get your eye to move through the garden is what you want to do. If you want something weird, this is the Huntington Garden. This is the succulent garden at the Huntington in California. Highly recommend. You're going to think you landed on an alien planet because the plants are so different from anything that we have here in Ohio. But look at the color combinations. Oh my gosh, orange and blue, fantastic. So maybe we do that, not quite as exciting, but we do something similar here. Kind of an orangey red and a blue pot. When you watch things like HGTV, it's never in Ohio. It's always in someplace like Texas. But you can mimic those things with Ohio plants. Find a color that works. Find a garden area that you like and pop those same colors in different spaces so that'll move your eye through the garden. Find seed heads and fall color and bark and fruit that is in color combination, that is the colors that you like. Look for things that are flowering at weird times. This is toad lily, flowering in the fall. Flowers are like September, October, which means the deer tend to leave it alone. It's not deer-proof. It's not deer-resistant. The deer would eat it, but the deer are more interested in each other than they are in flowers at this time of year. Find the plants that have some fall color to them. That's a native Amsonia. It looks like a nuclear bomb went off. This is consistent every year. Work with the flowers that have really nice fall color. Those are perennial mums, not the annual ones. Those are perennials, and they look like that in the fall. And so you pop other colors that will bounce off of that in the fall. Fruit, fall color. Autumn crocuses. Those are autumn crocuses in the lawn. There's that silver. That's winter. And the silver is a really nice color. Don't throw your ideas out. Gardeners will do just about anything. Oh, that has a hole in it. I should put a plant there. And if it dies, just spray paint it. Move on. And then the following year, that gives you time to think about what it is that you want. See, we'll plant in anything. This is a support group. The trick is to have fun. Your back hurts, your knees don't work, your ankles are sore, you're totally broke, your significant other is yelling at you to get out of the garden, it's 10:15 at night and you need to go to bed. They have to call you in for dinner. You might as well have a good time with it. So, as we move into the gardening season this year, please remember that you are trying to create a thing of beauty. And your neighbor is going to see something different than you do. We gardeners see the problems. Our neighbors see the beauty that we've created. So take 5 seconds this year and try to see your garden from a different perspective, to see the beauty that you've created in your own yard. Thank you very much.